Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be swatching these new Sweet Shop palettes from BH Cosmetics, and there were 6 that launched all together at Ulta. I picked up 4 of them. There were 2 that I just felt like I probably wouldn't wear very often, and these are a little bit more on the expensive side. They're $18. So I thought we could do some swatches, and also I'm going to be comparing these to some of the Colourpop monochromatic palettes that I have because I feel like these will look very similar. So why don't we go ahead and jump in and get started. All right, so first up, let's take a closer look at each palette individually, and then we'll get into the swatches. So first, I just want to quickly talk about the packaging because I think it's super beautiful. They did a really nice job on this. You have this raised lettering, and also the sprinkles are raised, so it kind of adds a little bit of texture to it, and it has an outer sleeve, and then the palette itself has basically the same packaging. Again, you have the raised lettering and sprinkles. The only thing about the palette that's different from the outer sleeve is that this one has the ingredient list. Now, it is really, really tiny. Normally, I show the ingredient lists in my videos, but even if I hold it up here and you pause the video, I think it's going to be kind of hard to read. They're available on the Ulta website, though, so you could definitely check that out in case you're curious. But here's a look at the palette itself, and then when we open it up, this one is basically the most neutral of the bunch. You just have a bunch of really beautiful browns in here, and I think this one's gorgeous. I mean, I know a lot of people would think it's boring, but I love neutrals, and I love that you get a row of mattes down here and then a row of shimmers, and I think they're all laid out like that, so I think that's really great as well. Next up, we have Orange Sorbet. And again, inside you have the 4 shimmer shades along the top and then the matte shades on the bottom. And I think this one is really beautiful as well. I love that they included this matte brown shade just to kind of ground the palette a little bit so it's not so bright, because you do have a couple of bright shades here. So I like that they added that neutral, and that way you can kind of tone down the look if you needed to. So I think this one is really pretty as well. And then we have Pistachio, and this one is an all green palette. And I like this one too because you do have a couple brights in here, but you also have some that are a little bit more grounded. This one I think is going to be absolutely stunning. You could do like a lighter green look with some of these, or something a little more deep and smoky on this side of the palette. So I can't wait to dive in and swatch these. And then the last one I got is Cotton Candy. And this one is a beautiful mix of pinks and purples. And I was particularly drawn to this side of the palette right here. And even these are kind of more in the purple family. I'm not a huge fan of these bubblegum pinks on this side, but I think most of the palette I would definitely wear. So especially this duochrome, I think that looks so stunning. So anyway, let's go ahead now and get into some swatches. All right, so first let's go ahead and do Sugar Cone. All right, so first we have the shade Homemade, and then we have Fudge, and then Toasted, and Cinnamon. Then we have Delicious, and Dipped, then Sugar Rush, and Cookie Dough. So guys, right away, just swatching these, I think these are the same formula as the London palette and Hangin' in Hawaii from their original travel collection that I loved so much. These feel just like those. As you can see, they're incredibly pigmented, super buttery. I mean, this formula feels like it's gonna be amazing. Next, we'll swatch Orange Sorbet. So first we have Chocolate Drizzle, and then Double Scoop, Extra Toppings, and this one is Tangy. And then we have Zest, and then we have Citron, Tangerine, and Yum. These 2 duochromes right here are so beautiful. Next up we have Pistachio. First up we have Cone or Cup. And then we have Crunch. Next we have Nutty. And then we have Treat, Guilty Pleasure, Dessert. Next we have Soft Serve, and then we have Sweet Life. And then last but not least, let's do Cotton Candy. So first up we have Carnival. Next is Twirl. This one's called Light and Airy. And then we have Swirl. And then Sugar Plum. And this one is Sugar. And this is Confection. And Fluff. All right, so now let's go ahead and get into some comparisons. So first we have the Orange Sorbet palette versus Orange You Glad from Colourpop. And looking at the two side by side, I think you have a lot of very similar shades in these palettes, if not exact dupes, but we're going to swatch them side by side and see how closely they really line up. But just looking at them in the pan, I think there's a lot of really similar orangey shades in here. Even like this shimmer shade looks almost exactly like this one. The only thing is the Colourpop has some extra matte shades and this one has one additional shimmer shade. Also, the Colourpop has a pressed glitter that this one doesn't have. So just a couple things to keep in mind. Let's go ahead now and look at some swatches. All right, so here we have Colourpop's Orange You Glad on the top row and then the BH Cosmetics Orange Sorbet on the bottom. And as you can see, these are really, really close. I think if you were to put these on your eyes, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference with most of the colors. The only differences here would be this one right here is an extra shimmer shade that the Colourpop doesn't have, so I just swatched it next to a matte, which looks like a really close color anyway, but the finish is different. And then you also have the pressed glitter in the Colourpop palette, and I just put this next to the lightest shimmer shade in the BH Cosmetics. But these two right here, I think this one's a little bit more yellow in the Colourpop. This one is that beautiful kind of peachy duochrome shade. And then I think this one lines up pretty closely. The BH one is just slightly deeper. And then the matte shades I think are really, really close. So if you already have the Orange You Glad palette, you might not feel like you need to run right out and buy this one. And then next up we have the Pistachio palette versus Just My Luck. So looking at the two side by side, I do think they look very similar, but the Just My Luck palette looks like it kind of skews a little bit deeper, while this one has a lot of these lighter shades on this side of the palette, with really just these two deep shades at the end, and then these are more mid-tone. The Colourpop one has 4 shimmers and 5 mattes. This one has 4 shimmers and 4 mattes, just because it has one less shade than the Colourpop does. So let's go ahead now and take a look at some swatches. All right, so here again we have the Colourpop in the top row, and then the BH Cosmetics on the bottom. And I do see a couple similar shades between these two, but they actually are a little bit more different than I thought they were going to be. Really, only this shade looks really, really close. And the rest of them are different, whether it's a textural difference, like this one here, you have a matte and a shimmer, even though they're very similar colors. This one as well, it's kind of just a little bit off. This one's more yellowy and this one's a little bit more green. But other than that, I do think the BH Cosmetics one just has a lot of those lighter shades and the Colourpop one is just a little bit deeper. Next up, I wanted to compare Sugar Cone to Colourpop's Going Coconuts. Now, I know the Sugar Cone one is just a brown palette, and I think there's so many palettes out there with these same shades, but since we were kind of going for the whole 9-pan Colourpop comparison, I figured I would choose this one since it was the closest. So just looking at the two side by side, I think the overall vibe of the Colourpop one is a little bit cooler and this one's maybe a little bit warmer toned, but we'll have to see once we do the comparison swatches. The Colourpop one has 3 shimmer shades right down the middle, and then the rest are mattes. This one is a matte with pressed glitter, and then this one has the 4 shimmers and the 4 mattes. So let's go ahead and take a look at some swatches. All right, so looking at these two side by side, I don't see any exact shade for shade dupes in this palette. I do think it kind of, again, has a similar vibe, but the Colourpop one definitely has more cool tone shades and the BH one is very warm toned overall. I also think that the formula in this particular BH palette is the best out of all 4 that I have. Not that the other ones are bad by any means. I think they're really good too and one of BH's best formulas, but there's just something about this one, particularly the shimmer shades, that are just extra smooth. So I really, really like this one. And then last but not least, the Cotton Candy palette to me looks a lot like a combination of Ooh La La and It's My Pleasure. So I'm seeing a lot of similarities. Basically these 4 shades I can see in this palette, and then these 4 I see in this one. So let's go ahead and do some swatches. All right, so the first four up here from Colourpop are from the Just My Pleasure palette, and then these four are Ooh La La, and then these are all from the BH Cosmetics. And while they don't line up perfectly as far as like shade for shade dupes, I think they're really, really close. So this is the only one that isn't super monochromatic because you do have both the pinks and the purples in here, while Colourpop chose to break them out and do pink and purple. So that being said, if you do have both Colourpop palettes, you probably don't need to pick up the BH Cosmetics one. All right, guys, so just some quick initial thoughts on these palettes. I think, at least swatch-wise, they feel very similar to the Love in London and Hangin' in Hawaii palettes that they did a while back. Also, the Desert Oasis, just with the really, really pigmented and smooth matte shades and the super buttery and pigmented shimmer shades. I think they feel really comparable to high end, so that might account for the higher price tag. Not to mention that the pan sizes are very, very large in these palettes, so you're getting a lot of product at the same time. But if you'd like to see a full review up on my main channel with some looks with these palettes, definitely let me know, and I could always put that together for you. But so far, just first impression wise, I think these seem amazing. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and also please don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well to see some more swatches and first impressions of palettes. And also don't forget to check out my main channel, Jen Phelps, as well, and I do regular makeup videos and reviews over there. So anyway, thank you guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.